Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Developing Workforce and Leadership Capability in the Era of Digital Transformation. Today's webinar is being presented by Stratbeans in association with SKILLSOFT. Let me quickly brief you about Stratbeans and SKILLSOFT. Stratbeans is leading e-learning company providing 360-degree digital transformation solutions to improve employee performance through e-learning products and solutions such as online content digitization, Autumn learning management systems, Autumn Sales Plus, and various platforms and tools for learning experience. We are an authorized partner of SKILLSOFT. About SKILLSOFT, SKILLSOFT is a global leader in corporate learning, delivering beautiful technology and engaging content that drives business impact for modern enterprises. SKILLSOFT provides a comprehensive selection of cloud-based corporate learning content, including courses, video, books, and other resources on business and management skills, leadership development, digital transformation, technology, and developer productivity and collaboration tools and compliance. Before I introduce you to the speaker, I would like to cover a few of the housekeeping topics here. One is all the participants will be on mute during the entire session. Second, if you have any question during the presentation, just write them in the chat or a QA box, which is available in the control panel. We will also answer the questions, during the last 15 minutes, all the answers, we will have the QA session at the last 15 minutes where you can ask questions. Those were about, the housekeeping points. Let me move ahead, to and introduce Benny Ramos. So Benny is Director, Global Solution Practice with SKILLSOFT. He is SKILLSOFT Solution Evangelist for Business and Leadership Training, a seasoned strategist with over 18 years of experience in the learning industry. He brings relevant insights to clients operating in North America and Asia, when he collaborates with organizations to help them understand how to utilize learning technology to drive performance. Prior to joining SKILLSOFT, he has led large, learning function for large Canadian company, which helps him provide a strategic and tactical perspective when he speaks to audience. Today, as an advocate for the modern learner, he is passionate for improving all aspects of employee life cycle and has been featured in various publications and a speaker of online learning and measurement at events throughout Canada, US, and Asia. Hey, Benny, welcome, Benny, and a very good evening to you. Glad to have you here. And of course, we are, really excited to hear you and all set to discover the new learning on leadership that you would be sharing today.
Thank you so much. And I am very, very happy to be here with our partners at Stratbeans. And I'm going to share my desktop now. And we will probably start off just talking a little bit about a poll. So if we could get you to interact right away. I'm from Canada. It's my evening here. And so we're going to hopefully make this a little bit exciting, a little bit engaging for you. And the information I provide to you is technology and vendor agnostic. So things that you can do yourself, but I am very happy to say that both Stratbeans and SKILLSOFT do these very well. So if you could start the poll, Deepa, what are the main priorities for you as a learning and development function or a talent development function? We did this survey in conjunction with People Matters across the region, and we'd like to see what your answers are. So please take a couple moments to answer the question, and then we'll share the results with you from the group, and then I will tell you what the answer was for many organizations in 2020 around India and the surrounding region. So we'll do this for another 10 seconds, and then we will end the poll and share the results. And it looks like we're getting some really good answers. So right now, what we'll do is we'll end the poll and we'll share the results for you. And the number one was building skills and capabilities required for the future. So over the organizations, this is very consistent, that had answered the query from the poll from People Matters in the region. About 82%, I apologize, 82% of individuals actually indicated, and these are leaders in learning development functions, that this was their number one priority. So let's start this off by, again, just a quick overview of who SKILLSOFT was. We had a great introduction at the beginning, but I want you to understand a little bit about our past so you understand the credibility here. We've have over 400 million users over the last 20 years, take 1 billion modules of learning. Today, at any given time, we have 45 million users using our platform learning today, which means our platform is very, very scalable and flexible in over 160 countries and 29 languages. Two other aspects here, just to point out that we have or are serving about 65% of the Fortune 500. So we have many organizations who trust us to help them with leadership development, technology and development and compliance training. And lastly, we've done over 50,000 mappings since 1998. And what we've done with those mappings is we've performed or created learning programs, and today we call them channels. So I'll demonstrate that to you today. Our agenda is going to go quite quick. We'll talk about what digitization is, the implications, what are examples of that for the region, what does this mean for us as learning and development organizations, then tell you, in terms of the model you might want to use to develop these individuals, both from a business perspective and a technical perspective, and then over through the pie-shaped organization and modern learning with questions and answers at the end. So let's begin. This whole idea of digital transformation that was talked about originally was socialized by the ESB Business School in Austria. And essentially what they talked about were things like AI, machine learning, RPA, robotics, blockchain. And many of these things are things that any organization can buy. But the only way you can leverage the technology and leverage the investment is if you have the flip coin, which is around the outside in this diagram, people who have skills to understand the technology. For example, what good is a data pool, having the technology and the platform to have big data if you don't have people who understand to interpret the big data and make data-driven decisions? So here, what we're going to be talking about is the idea that this technology is really translating into the experience that your clients and customers experience and what your employees experience. So again, just simplified here, unbundling, disintermediation, decoupling. Digital transformation with unbundling, I'm going to date myself. I used to buy the album or the cassette to buy all the music just for the one song. But today, I can go to an app like Google Play or the Apple Store and just buy the one song, which gives me, again, the flexibility for me to make the purchase that I want to make. Disintermediation, I used to have to go to a travel agent to make bookings with a hotel and an airline and all my activities. And now I can go with an app directly to a hotel or directly to an airline, which gives me flexibility, again, in my decision making. And lastly, decoupling. In every region around the world, regulations were put in place for the protection of consumers, especially in finance. So you had to go to a bank in the past to do loans and to do credit and to do investments and insurance and so on. But now, again, I can decide to go to different individuals and go and just invest the way I want. So really what it's all about is that organizations who are big can be agile, and organizations who are small can compete with the largest organizations in the world. And what that means to the individuals is this. The World Economic Forum has actually indicated that 1 out of 6 individuals will be displaced because of these technologies. AI, machine learning, and automation will have a great effect with the marketplace, and jobs are changing. When we think of 50 to 60% of all the jobs we'll be doing in 2030 The World Economic Forum has indicated around 57% of all jobs we will be doing in 2030 have not yet even been created yet. And let's look back to the idea of a data scientist. The data scientist, that title never existed 7 years ago, but today, according to LinkedIn, it's one of the highest paying jobs for a person fully trained. And again, what we're looking at here is that titles are changing, careers are changing, and for you as individuals working in learning and development and the talent industry, 1 out of every 6 of your employees who is perhaps engaged and passionate and knows about your processes and knows about the company will become unproductive in the near future because they don't have the skills to be productive. Now, what are the implications? The good news, the World Economic Forum has also indicated that 1 out of every 3 of these roles can be remedied with upskilling and reskilling. So let's take, for example, that idea of a data analyst or a data scientist. Perhaps you're someone who likes to work in Excel or likes to work in SQL as a database analyst. These are the competencies, these are the interests that you can translate in to a new role, a new job of a data analyst, a data wrangler, or a data scientist. And this is really exciting for us because what we're seeing in the marketplace is exactly what we're talking about today: upskilling, reskilling, and rearming individuals with digital transformation information. Now, the World Economic Forum says machines will actually create more jobs than they destroy. So again, even though we might see 1 out of 6 people displaced, let's look to our neighbors to see a very extreme example of what this might look like. So in China, for example, by 2028, they indicate that around 204 million jobs will be displaced. But believe it or not, because of AI, machine learning, the upkeep on robotics, and how to program our future, up to 297 million jobs will be created in China, which leaves a net of 93 million. And this will be replicated, according to PwC, in India, the United States, the United Kingdom, and so on around the world, provided we can arm these individuals with the tools they need. So in the area of India, you'll notice digitization to create 65 million jobs by 2025, according to OpenGov. Now, how will we fill these jobs? Let's look at if this is an interest to our individuals. We did a study with VANSON BOURNE in Asia Pacific with the region, including your neighbors in Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, the Philippines, Malaysia. And what we found is even though individuals, and we surveyed with VANSON BOURNE professionals, we asked them, even though they were getting training, if they believed their employers were doing enough. Almost 9 out of 10, 85% said they were not getting enough training. And 7 out of 10 were worried, not for the skills they were requiring today, but their future skills. Why? Well, let's give you a couple of examples. This I experienced at the Aloft Hotel in the United Kingdom. I actually was checking in and I was supposed to go to the 6th floor, but I got into the elevator and I thought it was a cleaning machine and it was getting off at the 3rd floor. So I followed it to the room that it was destined for. And once I got there, a person opened the door and they were surprised that I was there, but they were also equally surprised that the machine was there. They were told they were given a code, they punched in this code, and when the code was put in, their food was ready. These robot butlers from the Aloft Hotel has indicated they're going to eliminate about 1 out of every 7 jobs in that particular hotel chain. This will be replicated all across. Again, when we think of contact centers, engagement centers, omnipresence like chat, you might be thinking that you are chatting with a real person. This is an industry that has been underserved. It's had troubles trying to get people to work in these contact industries as call center agents or chat center agents, but with bots, it will actually help make sure that that industry can have enough people serving it. And lastly, just a good example here of many technologies. So it doesn't have to be a high-end organization with technology that's creating computers or cell phones or anything like that. Even your restaurant, and here what we see here is a technology created by Caliburger out of California in San Francisco. And you have robotics with the arm. You have AI and machine learning discerning if the food is cooked. You have big data to determine what or how much food to put on the grill. Never takes a break, never asks for a vacation, never asks for a raise. And within India alone, within the next couple of years, the guesstimate is this type of technology may affect anywhere from 3 to 8 million jobs. Now, what does this mean for us? What does it mean for us as organizations? Thinking of the fluency in communication and understanding the language is going to be around technology. So even in leadership and business, which I am very passionate about, you cannot be removed from this. You have to have a digital leader in the future. You need to have some sort of understanding of AI, machine learning, blockchain, and so on, because you need to be able to make good decisions about this. Now, thinking about how we work this and what the modern career is going to be like. My father, my mother, they went to school. My mother was a nurse. She went to school once and had the job for the rest of her career, decades upon decades. Today, according to Deloitte, the length of a career, because we're living longer, many of us are going to live longer just because of technology, is we're living longer, so our careers are longer. Second, though, the requirement for us, our utilization within a career, is shortening. A few years ago, it was 11 years for a career. Presently 7 years, working our way to 4.5 years in a career. Why? Because things are changing, technologies are changing, and the half-life of a learned skill is only 5 years. In fact, when you think of the market, the companies that are expiring over and over, do you know that the Dow Jones Industrial Index was formed initially with 4 companies that were the bellwether that every company after was going to be measured after? Out of those 4 companies, only one still exists, GE. The rest are no longer here. They've evaporated, they're gone. And so on, when we think of it, big companies and small companies. The skills that people were aspiring to and wanted to learn, or should be learning, were socialized by the University of Arizona. For 2020, and for the next few years, it was supposed to be around a computational world, and superstructured organizations, a new media ecology. So not just big data and AI machine learning. Do people know how to make a video? Do they know how to write for the internet? Because writing for the internet's different than writing on a paper. Do we even know what search engine optimization is? Because that's how people look for information today. In any case, things got turned on its head last year, didn't it? This was the plan over 2020 of the next 3 to 5 years, but guess what? The future is now. We couldn't wait 3 to 5 years. COVID happened. When you think of CNBC, they interviewed the CEO of Cisco in January of 2020. And they were asked, what percentage of companies are inquiring about remote workforces that you will be working with? And in January, the CEO said, about 50%. By March of that year, 95% of organizations were looking to have remote work. And everyone was trying to get digital transformation happening in their organizations, not for efficiency, not for productivity, but for safety and for the customer experience. And what I'm going to say to you on the right here, you'll notice that Slack CFOs indicate it's an opportunity for us to transform digitally. The technologies we're using for safety and for the customer experience externally, we should be thinking about that for our employees internally. Do they need fourth industrial revolution training if we're going to learn about the fourth industrial revolution? Are we going to use second and third industrial revolution type of tactics in the classroom, or are we going to have something scalable, something that's consistent, something that is going to be usable wherever there's an internet connection? And you know what? It was so busy last year that people under stress, they were underemployed, they became unemployed. And what happened in SKILLSOFT? Our utilization went up 351%. Why? Because people were trying to become employed, or they wanted to be fully employed. So this is something that there is a hunger for. And even with people, and we have access to MIT and Sloan management articles, we can see what the most viewed articles are. And you'll notice this list here talks about leadership and virtual work and COVID and so on. One of the top things that you have to acknowledge is this article by Linda Grattan, How to Help Employees Work from Home with Kids. Virtual teams, virtual remote work. And this is the stress people are under. The idea of work and personal time is blurring. But even though people are very, very busy, they want to keep their skills up and running. So let's look at this model. What kind of model might I suggest that you take for your organizations to really help get into this idea of future work life, future work skills. Believe it or not, something that came up 20 years ago is in vogue now. Jim Sephora from IBM talked about this idea of a T-shaped employee, with the vertical up and down being your very deep understanding in a certain topic, which is what we do today and we have done for decades. I am very deep in my understanding of HR and learning development. I might also have a deep understanding if I was a salesperson, or if I was in operations, or as I was in manufacturing. But the idea is that in your silo, you're good, but how do I collaborate across the rest of our organization? That T, or the horizontal skill, in this instance, what are those? We'll talk about those in a moment, but this has been adopted by Cisco. This has been adopted by IDEO, more recently by organizations like Spotify, and has been really kind of evangelized and preached by people like Josh Berzin. In November of last year, he talked about the idea of T-shape being the thing that we need now. And again, it's this broad understanding that we need, plus our deep functional specialty. And that broad understanding, this is Josh Berzin talking about it in November. And let's think of it this way. Digital transformation is about talent, not just technology. Again, I'm just going to reiterate that. Everyone can buy the technology. They can spend the money with Cisco. They can spend the money with Intel and so on. You can have Amazon Web Services, but unless you have the people to talk about this across the organization, not just in your IT organization, you're not going to be successful. So that T across the top for many of us is understanding digital transformation. So let's look at it from a business perspective. At SKILLSOFT, we do host something called Perspectives. And the Perspectives Conference is an event that we have many of our clients at. And we had a keynote. This keynote was about diversity and inclusiveness. And I just circled this principle of a diversity company. She has an MBA. She is, again, focused on diversity, has an HR background and a business background. And she came to us and had a conversation with her. And she wanted to learn about Python for data science. Now, again, no background in programming at all. Why would she want to do this? A little bit of a humorous look at this, but on her team and in her tool set, they're using Python. And if she was using Python for her clients, she wanted to understand what the capabilities were. Second is if she was leading data scientists, she wanted to understand how they thought logically so she could lead them more effectively. So again, this is something of an idea that many thought leaders believe is a requirement today, from Bill Gates to Sheryl Sandberg and so on. The idea that a technology orientation is something absolutely required for everybody. And as I pointed out before, this could be in the restaurant industry, it could be in the car industry. It doesn't matter where you are, technology will be pervasive. So this idea of understanding, this digital, evolution, not just a transformation, but an evolution, will demolish these silos. And this is what it might look like. And becoming from a data analyst to a data scientist. This is just one example. But let's look at the flip side. We all know that we have IT organizations. From a technical perspective, what might this look like? Well, I did an analysis in 2019 of 75 technology-related postings at IBM, where the T-shaped employees started. And we did find the trigger words of security, data, Java, machine learning, and DevOps, and so on. But believe it or not, 42%, my analysis, 42% of all the skills that were required of all these technology-related positions were business skills and leadership skills, negotiation, presentation, project management. All of these things are required. So in the T-shaped example for a technical person, the T, the I, the vertical, is your technical skills in programming. The horizontal is actually business and leadership skills. And this is actually something that's been an emphasis for a while. You'll notice that the amount of openings for cybersecurity alone are around 1.5 million globally. And we are experts in technical information, millions of hours, you'll notice, in programming, security, and so on. But I attended the ADAPT Digital Executive Conference this last fall, 2020, 15 CIOs and CTOs. And the number one thing they wanted to talk about with me at a technology event was lagging morale and engagement. Leadership was so important to them that they put everything else to the side and they wanted to talk to me about leadership. And this is, again, something that I wrote in 2019, a little bit ahead of the curve. The idea of COVID, even though it's temporal, it's going to continue. The change that started is just accelerated. Gartner has indicated that we had 3 to 5 months of big investment in digital transformation last year, which equivalent to 3 to 5 years of budget for everybody. It's not going to stop here. It's going to continue. So let's look at this in terms of the skills. Skills for remote workers, that's part of digital transformation. And again, leadership, Forbes has indicated, the idea of leadership over a remote environment is going to be very, very important. So why is leadership important for all? Here's a couple facts that you might want to be aware of. This is from Brandon Hall. They've indicated that leadership development is the largest expense item of your overall training budget, generally speaking globally, 35% of most learning and development budgets, to around 34% of compliance. But what's interesting is we spent all this money. Jeffrey Pfeffer from Stanford wrote from McKinsey, and he indicated that we're spending up to $50 billion for leadership development. You spend a third of your money on it, but only 1 out of 10 people who take leadership development training actually like what they get. So you put all this money out, only 1 out of 10 actually like it. On the right-hand side, 15% of human resource professionals rated their future bench strength as satisfactory, only 15%. Why? Because according to the Aberdeen Group, out of every 3 postings that they put for leaders internally, a company can probably only fill 2. And today, that third one they would have filled externally. It's much harder because with COVID, you can't fly in people from other countries to take these high-profile roles. It's just less mobility. Now, thinking about this just from my individual experience and from my peers, what we found with Brandon Hall and a democratizing leadership white paper was this. 10% is a significant number. And why? 10% is the number of leaders for their first leadership role that say they actually volunteered for it. That means the other 90% nominated into the role because they are most senior, they are the most experienced, or the best salesperson, or the best operations person. So they're never prepared from a mental standpoint or from a knowledge standpoint. So how do we remedy that? A couple things around what the 6 truths of leadership and what does this research show. I'm just going to pull in a couple things here. So we wrote a blog I was involved in with Aya Belli who's our senior vice president of leadership development at the time in 2018, who's also a associate professor at the Carroll School of Business in Boston College. When we found this about leadership development, it was limited. There's just a few people able to take it. We found it was more command and control. That was the emphasis. And lastly, it was more around execution. In fact, Harvard and Oxford and Korn Ferry, they believe that leadership is still the same as it was in the past. Good communication and reducing errors. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if that's all there is to it, we're missing something. So let's talk about this top line, democracy. Democratizing leadership is important for 2 reasons. Number one, we saw that with COVID, people who are more mature are more apt to be susceptible to things like sickness, and they might retire. And in fact, Mercer has indicated that leaders aged 55 to 65 are increasing by 4.2%, and 65 and older by 2.6%. So you need to have this pipeline. If you want to develop that pipeline, you need to develop leaders at scale, and you'll have replacement. So leadership development is equal to business continuity. That's the first thing. The second thing that I want to say to you is this, that a person by the name of Mitch Joel wrote a book called 6 Pixels of Separation. And what he said in 2017 or so was that the modern leader had about 70 impressions on their time. What's an impression? It's a phone call, it's an email, it's a notification from a system, it's something they had to do. Today, it's about 110 impressions per day. We're just so busy. So the more you can have distributed decision-making in your organization, the more receptive you will be, the more adaptive you'll be, and the more competitive you'll be. Second is just from a connect and collaborate perspective, the framework. it's not just about telling people what to do. The new modern framework, according to Defton and Legel, if you read them as authors, is really about being a symphony conductor. The symphony conductor doesn't tell the horn player how to play. They don't tell the piano player how to play. What they do is they make sure they're in line, they make sure that they have the right members there, and they make sure they're playing all in the same direction. And that's the modern leadership. And lastly, just in terms of innovation, I just want to point this out, actually. So when you think of innovation, there's great examples like Kodak, BlackBerry. My favorite one, though, is Nokia. Nokia, all focused on execution. 2007, they had over 70 to 75% of the cell phone market. And they decided to go for it. Let's just make it cheaper, let's make it faster, and let's go to the market. By 2012, they lost 90% of their market share, and their CEOs had to go to the board and say, guess what? We did nothing wrong, but we still failed. Why? Because the market favored innovation. Everyone was buying an iPhone, not a Nokia phone. So again, innovation is something that we need to keep in mind. So, the new era of learning and new world of work, it's around upskilling these business skills, communication, and leadership, but it's going to be broader. It's not just leadership, it's going to be leadership like this. This is from Harold Yarkey of the Internet Time Alliance. This with Clark Quinn, Jay Cross, Jane Hart. And leadership, we think of a hierarchy. Today, the leader is a little bit different. They are responsible not just for the hierarchy or the team, but the hierarchy or the network. Today, the leader is not just responsible for people, but people to people and people to machines. The output of the network is what they're responsible for. And if you don't have an understanding of technology, you'll never make good decisions. So innovation, again, just this core competency. We'll go on a little bit. And what would this look like? Let's give you an idea of what this looks like. The pie-shaped organization, again, the new competencies, the silo leadership in the past. If I was a leader in the past, all I had to do was be a good observer. Maybe I was the best person making something in the manufacturing line, and I would have had a lot of other people just manufacturing for me. I just had to observe. Today, mission-based teams, more temporal, and a little bit different today because they're going to be much more diverse. So for example, the C-suite is what a new team is much more apt to look like throughout the rest of the organization. Why? You have a CFO, financial, CMO, chief marketing officer, CEO, COO, chief operating officer. More teams are apt to have someone from HR, someone from marketing, and so on. And again, it's a little bit different. So the core competencies are just not observation. It's going to be broader in range. And what we'll have is this collaboration across. So if we have that person who is a business person on the left-hand side, and they have the big T and small t skill sets across the top, knowing about technology, but also knowing about things, like I said, writing for the web. On the other side, we have the technology and developer area, and across the top, they have business and leadership across the horizontal, and then they will join to have the pie-shaped or the comb-shaped organization. This is an instructional way to support your organization and make it more collaborative and more competitive. A lot of this information has been captured in the Lean into Learning report we did for 2020 at SKILLSOFT, and talks about organizations and what they do. So let's do a quick poll here as we come into the end of the presentation. And what is your key L&D challenge? Let's ask you, and if we could get the poll up, Deepa, that would be great. There you go. This was also asked, so please take a few seconds to answer the poll. This was also asked by the participants in the People Matters poll that we did within India, and we want to understand what your concern is. What's your key concern? We'll do this for another 5 seconds or so because it looks like people are quite quick in answering. Okay, I'll stop this in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're going to share the results. And guess what? Lack of interest among employees. 49% in the People Matters poll said lack of interest among employees. So let's see, what can we do to get interest among employees? This is perfect. So thank you for playing along with me because you're actually helping me out here. So again, in the regions, Asia, Oceania, overall, learning is very important. And how do we make sure it's not just important to the business, but important to the individual? All this idea is around engagement. Now, engaging the learner is going to be important, but I just want to talk at a higher level really quickly. A person by the name of Kevin Cruz wrote this super article on the left-hand side in a book called We. And really, he talked about the idea that engaged organizations are 10 to 12% more productive, have 3% less absenteeism, and have a 15% salary elasticity, which means if I'm working at my company today and someone offered me a position at another company across the road, exact same position, if I'm engaged, it'll take up to 15% more salary for me to go to that position. And according to Aon Hewitt, the top 3 drivers are this. Number 1, performance management and work-life balance. So they kind of tied there, telling people how they're doing. And of course, with the things over this last year, work-life balance is difficult because I'm at the same table that my wife is working at or my kids are working at, and it's all very busy. Number 2, career development and learning and development. So we all have a great role in engaging our learners. And what we did at SKILLSOFT, and again, this is just validating that future of work is nothing without training. This is that VANSON BOURNE study. What do? We want to make sure that we can capture their consumer-based tendencies. They know what a channel is. They may not know what a learning curricula is because they watch Netflix, they watch, streaming TV. They don't know what a learning program is, but they know what a playlist is because they use their apps for their music. And they also know what a good shopping experience is like. Do you have a good shopping experience when they're looking for courses? The people are very busy. Only 1% of the modern work week is allocated to learning, about 24 minutes. Do you have 24 minutes or training that can be put into 24 minutes, according to BOURNE by Deloitte? Well, what we've done is we actually made sure that our training was most engaging. This is an MIT lab with an Accenture employee. And what we did is we did fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging, and EEG. Looked at what parts of the brain were being activated and how strong the activation was. And what we found was really interesting. Things like words per minute, about 100, 110 words per minute is the best rate. What colors and so on. But the biggest thing we learned is telling people what good looks like is not as powerful as showing people what good looks like. That's why I showed you the video. If I told you we did brain research, so what? But you look at it and it's more impactful, which is why in our learning, we actually have scenario-based videos. We have actors showing you what good and bad leadership look like because leaders have changed. This is a Christmas list now today. It's not a list now, it's all electronic. So if you want something that's scalable, replicable, and cost-effective, leveraging technology is going to be important. So this modern formula here is what we try to implement at SKILLSOFT. Learner-centric. You want to make sure that what they see is for them. Micro-modular, short bursts. Wouldn't it be great if I was just going to have my first critical conversation and I could watch a 3-minute video before I had to give bad news on a Zoom call or walk into a person's office. Varied treatments. We do have live speakers. We have people that are experts, Kavi Blanchard, Tom Peters, and so on. But we also have those scenarios. Retention driven, do we have tests? Absolutely. Embedded, yes. We have, in terms of learning in the flow of work, there is an ability for us to get learning without actually being in the platform and mobile, absolutely mobile. When Harvard University queried their students, 2017, they asked them, how do you look for information and how do you like to consume information? 53% said, I like to look first on the internet before any of my books, just like you and me. 51% said, I like to consume information first and foremost on an iPhone. They didn't say something like a mobile device, a tablet, a computer. They actually said iPhone first. So do you have, media that can be consumed on an iPhone? We do. We can watch courses. We can watch videos. We can read full-length books, summaries, and we have the exclusive redistribution of MIT Sloan Management Review articles. We can listen when it's not appropriate, just like an Audible book with full-length books, summaries, and you can download many of these to your device. And practice assets. In terms of practice assets, again, that's something that not only can you practice, the skill of giving a speech, of building a team, But we also have practice assets for instructors so that they can lead a conversation after someone's taken the learning and have a blended learning environment. All very much done for the learner. And believe it or not, all of this, to make sure they've done it completely, we have blockchain enabled badges so that you know they did it properly. They can't lie. And in fact, what we found last year, or sorry, 2019, LinkedIn had actually done a survey and 26% of people actually admitted to lying or exaggerating on their profiles. Here, you can't lie. You either did it or you did not do it. Now, leadership development topics, I just want to give you some idea of how we developed this. 2018, we went to Wharton Business School, one of a prestigious school, and they vetted all our content. And since 2019 November, we actually have partnered with MIT Sloan. So we co-curate and co-create all our content with them because they are with us, aligned with organizations like Stanford and Cambridge, that leadership development cannot be separated from technology. And in fact, the lens we look through, you'll notice that we have starred some of these. The lens we looked through was something called Project Oxygen from Google. And what they did is they looked at, over a 2-year period, what are the 8 to 10 competencies that a digital leader is made more effective or most effective. And we wanted to make sure that we're reflected here. And we have, again, scenarios where we have a host guide you through a scenario and you can see people who are good leaders, people who are not so good, and again, it enables you to see what good looks like. And we feature MIT faculty staff like Stephanie Warner, like Hal Gregerson, like Jerry Kane, who has created for us recently a digital leadership assessment, which will be launched in the next couple of months. 11 competencies will rate you on, and it'll tell you these are the courses and or books that you should take to bridge your gaps. Renee Gosselin, and all this you can look for, or you can have an Aspire journey. So what is that? An Aspire journey is basically a curated amount of assets that you take in a linear fashion. I just want to stop by saying here that the SKILLSOFT program, we have a lot of recognition over the last 2 years. In fact, the most recognized leadership development program in the electronic space or the online space. There's one other that may be out there, but if you were to say what they have, they were recognized in 2 of these awards, where we've been recognized in all these awards, and we just received another Training Industry Top 20 award. Now, conclusions here. Again, we do have, of course, that People Matters report that we hope you will get your hands on, but we also have this Lean Into Learning report, and it will have a lot of results that we've curated for you and what happened in 2020, including case studies like what happened with Hitachi Consulting. They had a very young population, so they wanted different ways to learn, and they got our books and our audio books and so on, and their program is very successful, rising. They wanted to implement leadership development and project management all together, and they were able to use our content to create a program that was very, very good for them. And DXE technology, again, this is more technology based, but it is just showing the breadth that we have within SKILLSOFT. And I'm going to end with this and then turn it back to people. This is a picture of a burning boat. Cortez in 15th century actually sailed from Spain to try to go to India. Unfortunately, he ran into Mexico along the way when he was sailing because maps weren't that great. They were supposed to create a fort and send a ship back. He had 11 ships and create a trading outpost. After a few months, he asked his crew why the progress was so slow. And they indicated that we were holding some supplies back just in case we failed and we had to go back. When they woke up the next morning, all the boats except one were burning. Cortez burned the boats. And my message to you is technologies like Facebook and Instagram and all these other things are burning your boat. If you don't have content that is as good as that, as cool as that, as engaging as that, there are other things that will take your staff attention. And with that, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to me today. And Deep, I believe you have an announcement, and then we'll go to questions.
Yeah. Thank you, Benny. You have shared a wonderful insights, and I'm sure participant would be taking benefit out of your, what you have shared. Of course, I can truly relate to you when you share the 6 truths of modern leadership, democratize, then create and empower, team, connect, collaboration, and innovation mindset. So yeah, I do, can relate that this is something that nowadays every individual or the organization would require in terms of to develop the modern leadership. Before, I would definitely, we would like to have, the questions from your side. Of course, I would request participants to share your questions in the chat box or the QA box with us so that Penny can answer those. And before we, have the questions with us. Meanwhile, I'll just quickly wanted to share something for our audience here. Skillsoft is, happy to extend their support by giving 4-week Persevere experience for your organization. So this 4-week would cover total, top critical competencies of leadership, such as strategic thinking, leading innovation, new leader transition, etc., to name a few. If you, I would definitely be happy to take this communication offline where we can discuss this in detail. Please feel free to write to me on, if you would like to know more about this 4-week pilot experience that we are offering.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. I guess we have a couple of questions here from the audience side. Let me read out for you, Benny. So first question is from Mr. Srinivasan. He has asked how the mistrust between employer and employees hinder manpower development.
So yeah, it's a very good question, and I think it's getting more difficult. The idea of remote work makes gaining trust more difficult, which is why we do have some content around leading remotely. But it comes down to an alignment, and the alignment within organizations, and the alignment, the leaders of the actions, and the alignment of the desires of the employees. We can meet. We noted that Aon Hewitt had indicated there's the 3 biggest engagement drivers today: work-life balance, performance management, and learning development. I think if we focus as leaders on those 3 things, we gain the trust of the employees. So let's go back to work-life balance. We know that it's very difficult to, in a busy organization, perhaps just to give people time off, but there are sacred times that they would hope that we respect. It may be certain holidays, certain religious occasions, and or certain personal events like a birthday and or an anniversary. If we can at least recognize those in some sort of way of fashion, recognition overall as a leader is one of the big things that we want to focus on. Second is the fact that organizations overall, when we think of performance management, perhaps aren't doing the best job. About 50% of organizations that I go into before implementing leadership development programs are still doing an annual review. The one time that an employee gets feedback, which may be so removed from when they actually did something good or perhaps did something bad, letting a person know exactly where they are with relation to their performance and doing it in a proper fashion will gain trust and credibility with your employees. And lastly, again, career development and learning development. Today, no one is valuing this more than the employees themselves, because the action of the last year, I've seen many people who were employed underemployed or unemployed, which is why, of course, at Skillsoft, we had that increase of 351%. So I think focusing on what Aon Hewitt, Aberdeen Group, and other groups that measure engagement are telling us, I think this is the best way to bridge that distrust that's currently happening with many organizations. It sounds easy, but you need the right techniques, and perhaps you need the right support from both above as well as the mid-level leaders who are actually going to be working with the employees in the front lines. I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Benny. We have another question from Srinivasan. So do inappropriate university education put more financial burden on employers? That is the question. Then he also says universities at the same time perpetuate engaging teaching faculties from educational institutes and not with industry experience? Please.
Sure. So again, there's a little bit of a bias here from my personal perspective, but organizations who have faculties who are required to have consulting work or consultant or work experience, I think are much more valuable than those that aren't, which is again part of the criteria that we looked at when we partnered with MIT Sloan. Now, the idea of the value of a university education is in question today, as you may have heard or may have observed. Organizations like Google and or Microsoft are looking for particular competencies and maybe not necessarily having the person who has the full university degree. In fact, my understanding is about 18% of the intake of all employees at Google today actually don't have university educations. They have taken other avenues to gain the education that they require. For example, programming, which doesn't need to be through a post-secondary institution. It can be through something like a online content provider. So with respect to the question, I absolutely agree that the value of organizations, post-secondary institutions, is only going to be enhanced if they have people who are teaching, who have experience. But I'll give you an example of one organization, a business school out of the Western United States, where I engaged a professor who recently wrote a book about the best practices of management and had not actually managed anyone for 10 years. And I believe that that's a huge issue when it comes to them being an influence on hundreds and hundreds of students. So again, I concur with the observation.
Thanks, Benny. I hope, Srinivasan, we were able to address your question. We have another question, which is kind of a very interesting one. It's like, how can we encourage employees who don't find self-learning or virtual or digital learning convenient?
No, sure. So three things. Number one is I would encourage them to look at their competitors or who they aspire to be. That will give them a clue as to if their direction is correct, because their industry it may be outpacing them, and if they aren't outpaced today, the implications of technology will catch up with them. The second is that if you look at the studies that have come out, perhaps out of PwC and or Mercer and actually McKinsey Group, organizations that are undergoing digital transformation, educating their employees, are around 42% more productive and profitable than those who are not. And then lastly is look at the intake of within their organization. The idea that education is only in the middle of the employee life cycle, it would be incorrect. At the very beginning, many individuals are looking to see, and the questions they ask is, can I get training? It will be a way for you to actually enhance your employee intake and attraction, because this is what individuals are looking for. Why? Because they want to be fully employed and they want to continue to be fully employed. So again, it's around the employee life cycle. It's not just learn like my parents did and your parents have, learn and continue in one career. It's learn, unlearn, relearn, unlearn, relearn. That's the way that organizations will operate. Maybe a quick example. I apologize if I mean I can spend as much time as we need, but a good example is if I were to ask you which stock, if you put $1,000 into Tesla, Apple, and Amazon in 10 years ago, and ask you, tell you that there's one other organization that outperformed all these organizations, would you know what that is? Would anyone be able to chat and tell me what that organization is? More productive, more valuable than Google in terms of $1,000, than Amazon, than Tesla, and over a 10-year period. And would you be surprised? A person by the name of Ryan Berman wrote a book on it called A Return on Courage. and it's an organization called Domino's Pizza, a pizza place that was failing 10 years ago. And in fact, there was commercials. Their competitor put a commercial out and said that they were the worst pizza during a sporting event called the Super Bowl. And a few days later, they came up with their own commercial and said, we're not the worst. We did our own taste test, and people said we were the second worst. That's how bad their pizza was. So what they acknowledged was the reason people bought their pizza not was because it was good, but because it was fast and convenient. So their CEO determined that they were not a restaurant or a food vendor. They were a digital entertainment company. So what they've done, if you look at the, you could look at their valuation, you can Google this yourself, Domino's versus Tesla versus Amazon versus the rest. They spent money educating their organization, employing data analysts and data scientists, and ensuring technology was there to make their pizzas as fast as possible, including robotics, and they have outperformed these large organizations. It's just kind of incredible. So just wanted to give an example, real life example, and hopefully that answers the question.
Thanks, Benny. Thanks for sharing the example with us. We have a couple of questions for you. Mr. Srinivas would like to know, how do we create engaging content for a routine functional training programs?
So engaging content, there's three aspects to it. One is the content itself. So if you partner with an organization like us, I believe the content itself will be engaging, but to make sure that it is engaging the actual emotions and actual drive of the individual employees, two things should happen. Number one is contextualizing it within the organization. So if you have a senior leader, a sponsor, someone who's willing to help market this within the organization, and ideally it's not the learning and development organization on their own marketing this, but having a senior sponsor, I believe that's important. The second is having explicit and implicit learning. Explicit, of course, is the learning organization pushing this out, but there are many ways to ensure that learning is included in different daily activities or different parts of the organization. I'll give you an experience, example. My last organization is involved with a telecommunications company, the second largest telecom in Canada. What we did was every month the CEO had a newsletter that went out, State of the Nation newsletter. And every time the newsletter went out in a digital format, words that were new or would be highlighted didn't just go to a glossary or someplace on the internet. It actually went to a SKILLSOFT asset that people could take and get more deep understanding on. So even though it's a communication vehicle, the learning was embedded within that process. So I think there's many, many ways to embed learning that way, and that's just an example.
Thanks, Benny. I hope, Srinivas, we were able to answer your question. Benny, we have another question. This one is from Vinod, who is asking, what are the best ways to measure impact of leadership development programs?
Sure. So, there's a lot of people will use the old, level 1, 2, and 3 type of assessment. Number 1, do they like it? Number 2, do they know it? And number 3, did it matter? That return on investment. I think there's broader ways to look at this. Overall, the platform or the system that I like to use was actually developed by an individual called Gwyn McGregor, who actually lives in Canada, but he's implemented this with other organizations, and it's AUGUR: access, use, grade, engagement, and rating. And because it's useful for classroom activities as well as online. So access, how many people are registering, whether it's online or whether it's in a classroom environment. Use, are they attending it? What's the exit rate in the program on an online program? Grade, do they pass it to the tests, of course. Engagement, in terms of the engagement with respect to the number of page views, the number of time, you can actually see, how much of the actual course are people attending, and the rating. With SKILLSOFT, you can have the thumbs up. You can, what's trending in terms of topics and so on. But overall, with leadership development programs, the proof is in the pudding, and many organizations actually look at the number of lateral moves that people will make, the number of promotions that people will get compared to a control group that didn't get any of this training, and the retention of key talent. Were these all factors? Again, this is more long-term, but worthwhile, I believe.
Thanks, Benny.
Good questions. Very good questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Benny. So we have one question, but we are running out of time. If you could answer this, at a quickly, if you could answer this one question from Shravin, would like to know, what leadership courses are important according, in this current situation that world is facing.
Which courses or which topic? If I had to pick one topic, hard, but I'd probably say the agile leader. Change is happening and occurring at a great pace, and I think the agile leader is probably the most important aspect. Followed more tactically by remote leadership, virtual leadership, because it's just pervasive today. I believe that'll ease off near the end of the year, but I think those two things, but change is going to be important, helping people understand change and motivating people to be engaged during change as an agile leader is the most important aspect I see today.
Thanks, Benny. I hope, Shravin, we were able to answer that as well. The Agile Leader is one of the programs that Benny has suggested for you, that one should go in this current situation that we are facing. Now, I would take an opportunity to thank Benny for sharing his experiences. We have, learned a lot from today's session from you. Thank you, Benny, and thanks for accommodating to our time zone. And lastly, I would a special thanks to all the participants who have attended the webinar. We hope to see you again next time. And if you have, any questions, please feel free to write to us at deepa@stratbeans.com. I will be, sharing the webinar recording along with the SKILLSOFT annual learning report with you. If you have any queries regarding that as well, please feel free to write to us. Once again, thank you for all your time and have a wonderful day. Thank you for your support. Thank you.